You find yourself trapped in a labyrinthine mental hospital where the fluorescent lights flicker in patterns that seem to communicate in code, and the white walls appear to breathe ever so slightly when observed from the corner of your eye. Your medication comes in unmarked cups, administered by nurses whose faces never quite stay in focus, no matter how hard you try to memorize their features, leaving you uncertain whether you're being treated or slowly poisoned as the bitter pills dissolve on your tongue and strange symptoms begin to manifest. Fingers that occasionally move without your conscious command, gaps in your memory that expand like sinkholes, and the unsettling certainty that someone is watching you through the small observation window in your door, even during the dead hours of night when the ward should be empty. Other patients whisper to you in the common room about experiments conducted in the basement levels, their eyes wide and hands trembling as they describe procedures that leave no physical scars but hollow out something essential within. And you begin noticing that some patients disappear only to return days later with the same bodies but subtly different personalities, as though something else now wears their skin. The distinction between dreams and wakefulness blurs as you find yourself suddenly in different rooms with no memory of how you got there, discovering cryptic notes written in your own handwriting that you have no recollection of writing, warning of specific dates and times when they will come for you next. Security cameras track your movements, but when you study them closely, you realize they turn fractionally before you change direction, as if they're not recording but anticipating your movements. During group therapy, you notice that occasionally all conversation stops simultaneously mid-sentence, with every patient and staff member freezing for precisely 7 seconds before resuming as if nothing happened. And when you mention these lapses, your psychiatrist doubles your medication while making notes that you aren't meant to see but catch glimpses of. Phrases like accelerated awareness and breaking conditioning that make your blood run cold. At night, the walls between patient rooms seem thinner, and you hear muffled conversations that sound like your own voice, discussing intimate details of your life with someone whose responses consist only of mechanical clicks and words. You start testing reality by leaving small objects in specific arrangements, only to find them subtly rearranged when you return, always in patterns that seem almost meaningful, like a language you're on the verge of understanding. The mounting horror comes not from supernatural entities, but from the growing certainty that everything happening is entirely human in origin, that you are the subject of an elaborate psychological experiment designed to systematically dismantle your sense of self and reality, leaving you permanently altered in ways you lack the vocabulary to articulate, trapped in a nightmare where your paranoia is entirely justified but impossible to prove. Your hospital gown bears a barcode with a sequence of numbers that changes slightly every time you check it, and you've begun to suspect it's a countdown to something irreversible. The staff members all have identical scars behind their right ears, visible only when they turn at certain angles under the harsh lighting, and you've started to notice a thin wire trailing from these scars down their necks, disappearing beneath their uniforms. Food tastes increasingly metallic, and sometimes you find tiny mechanical components, no larger than grains of rice, hidden in your meals, too deliberate to be accidental contamination. You've discovered that if you press your ear against specific points on the wall at exactly 3:37 a.m., you can hear a low-frequency hum that seems to form words in a language that feels familiar, though you've never studied it. Mirrors show your reflection with a microsecond delay, just enough to create the nauseating sensation that you're watching a near-perfect simulation rather than yourself. During rare supervised outdoor time in the hospital's courtyard, you've noticed that birds never fly directly overhead, but circle the perimeter as if repelled by an invisible barrier, and the clouds seem to move on tracks, repeating the same formations every third day. You've begun secretly documenting your experiences using a contraband pencil stub hidden in your mattress, but sometimes return to find earlier entries altered in subtle ways, dates changed, details modified, though the handwriting remains unmistakably yours. One night during a power outage, when the backup generators failed for 7 minutes, you glimpse staff members moving with inhuman coordination in the darkness, communicating through patterns of clicking sounds while efficiently transporting equipment from hidden panels in the walls, their eyes reflecting the emergency lights like those of nocturnal animals. You've discovered that certain combinations of words trigger subtle reactions in staff, a barely perceptible pause, a momentary dilation of pupils, suggesting programmed responses to linguistic triggers you don't fully understand. The water from your sink occasionally runs thick and black for precisely 30 seconds before clearing, leaving no residue but carrying a scent that triggers vivid memories you're certain aren't yours. You've developed the ability to predict exactly when certain routine events will occur, down to the second, as if you've lived through this same day countless times before. Most terrifying of all is the growing sensation that your mind is being systematically hollowed out and replaced with something else. Not through crude surgery, but through carefully calibrated psychological manipulation, chemical conditioning, and technologies operating just beyond your comprehension, transforming you into something that will walk and talk like you, but serve some purpose so alien that your current self couldn't possibly comprehend it. The hospital's architecture defies Euclidean geometry. Corridors that should connect instead lead to entirely different wings. Rooms that appear small from the outside contain impossibly vast interiors, and stairwells that spiral downward for far too many floors, given the building's apparent height. You've calculated that the sun rises exactly 7 minutes later each day as viewed through your window, suggesting either that time is being artificially manipulated or that the window doesn't show the actual outside world at all. Your skin has begun to develop a subtle pattern of discoloration that resembles circuit boards when viewed under certain lighting conditions, and sometimes when you press against these patterns, you feel a distinct clicking sensation beneath the surface. Other patients have started to react to your presence with a mixture of reverence and terror, whispering that you've been selected or that you're becoming, though none will elaborate on what these cryptic statements mean. The doctors have taken an unusual interest in your dreams, forcing you to recount them in exhaustive detail while recording your narratives. And you've noticed that elements from these dreams sometimes manifest in the physical environment. Days later, a painting described in a dream appearing on a wall that was previously blank, or a distinctive piece of furniture that existed only in your subconscious now sitting in the common room. You've discovered a hidden panel in your bathroom that conceals a small chamber containing thousands of cassette tapes, each labeled with your name and a date, stretching back decades before your birth and forward far into what should be your future. Occasionally, you catch glimpses of yourself on security monitors, performing actions in real time that you aren't actually doing, creating the horrifying impression that there are two versions of you existing simultaneously within the facility. Certain staff members appear to age rapidly over the course of a single day, their hair graying and skin wrinkling before returning to normal the following morning. while others never seem to age at all, despite your having seen photographs indicating they've worked at the facility for over 50 years. You've begun experiencing sensations that don't correspond to any known sense. The ability to feel radio waves passing through the building, to taste the emotional states of others, or to hear the electrical currents running through the walls. Your reflection has started having conversations with you, initially just mouthing words silently, but gradually becoming more autonomous, sometimes continuing to move after you've stepped away from the mirror. You've discovered that if you arrange your meager possessions in specific geometric patterns and observe them from precisely the right angle, they create optical illusions that seem to open windows into other sections of the facility, where you witness disturbing procedures being performed on unconscious patients. The few personal items you were allowed to keep have begun to transform subtly. Photographs showing people you don't recognize but who the staff insist are your family, books whose text rearranges itself when you're not looking, and a watch that doesn't track conventional time but instead counts down to specific events that then occur throughout the facility. Some mornings you wake to find surgical tape and gauze on parts of your body, covering incisions that heal with unnatural speed, leaving no scars but persistent numbness in the affected areas. You've realized that your assigned patient number corresponds to geographic coordinates in the Arctic Circle when properly formatted, and you wonder what facility might exist at that remote location and how it connects to your current circumstances. The therapy sessions have evolved to include bizarre sensory elements, lights that pulse at frequencies that induce vivid hallucinations, sounds that trigger specific emotional responses or memory cascades, and olfactory stimuli that bypass conscious thought entirely. You've detected a pattern in seemingly random facility events that, when properly mapped, forms recognizable mathematical sequences suggesting that everything, from power fluctuations to staff rotations to patient relocations, follows a complex algorithm designed to achieve some precise outcome. Most disturbing of all is your growing suspicion that you voluntarily committed yourself to this facility for reasons you can no longer remember, signing away your rights and even your identity as part of an experiment you once believed in, fervently enough to sacrifice everything. In rare moments of clarity, you question whether your perceived reality might be entirely simulated, a controlled environment designed to study how a human mind responds to carefully crafted psychological terror, with researchers observing from behind the facade, meticulously documenting how close they can bring you to the edge of sanity without destroying your mind completely. The boundaries between patient and staff have begun to blur as you notice that some of the doctors exhibit the same symptoms they claim to be treating, suggesting that the distinction between observer and subject may be merely another layer of the experiment. You've started finding messages hidden throughout the facility that appear to be from a previous version of yourself, warning of specific events and offering cryptic advice that only becomes clear after you've experienced what they reference. Some nights, under the influence of your evening medication, you find yourself able to pass through walls and observe other parts of the facility, though whether these are hallucinations, dreams, or some form of technologically induced out-of-body experience remains impossible to determine. You've discovered that certain patients are actually elaborate biological androids, nearly perfect replicas of humans but with subtle tells. They never bleed when injured, their blinking patterns follow precise mathematical intervals, and their skin temperature runs exactly 2 degrees below normal. The most terrifying realization is that you've begun to question whether you yourself might be one of these constructs, implanted with false memories of a human life that never existed, programmed to believe you are a patient when in fact you are the experiment itself. a synthetic consciousness being tested to its limits in an elaborate crucible of psychological horror designed to determine just how human an artificial mind can become when subjected to the most quintessentially human experience of all. Existential terror in the face of a reality that cannot be trusted and a self that may never have existed at all.